Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode, we're doing Who Was Better. The topic of the episode, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. Arguably two of the biggest stars in the history of wrestling, the two main stars of the heralded Attitude Era, two guys that have faced off in the main event of 3 different WrestleManias, two guys that are pretty much household names even amongst non-wrestling fans. So let's see how they stack up. If you haven't seen my videos before, we're going to grade each guy on 8 different categories. Each category is rated on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. At the end of the 8 categories, we're going to add up their total points. There is a chance to get bonus 5 points at the end, and we'll talk about that when we get there. And basically, whoever comes up with the most points is determined to be better. Now, starting off with our first category, technical wrestling, we're going to start off with The Rock. The Rock, I'm going to give a 3. Now, it might be different if The Rock came up in a different era, maybe 5 years later, 5 years before, but his style of wrestling fits the Attitude Era. And what I mean by that is, if you go back and watch, there's a lot of 3-minute, 5-minute, 7-minute matches, main events maybe 10 minutes long. So there wasn't a real onus on the in-ring action. It was lightning quick, get this done, do the angle, and move on. I wouldn't say The Rock was a bad technical wrestler, but I would say he's right at the middle of the pack. Like I said, if he would have came up in a different era, he's an insanely athletic guy. I think he might have done a little better. Unfortunately, with the era he was in, it gives him a bit of a knock. Now for Steve Austin, I'm going to give Steve a 4. And the reason being, yes, they did have basically the same era, but if you go back prior to his neck injury, Stone Cold Steve Austin is one of the best in-ring performers in the world. He's right up there with Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Ric Flair, Razor Ramon, whoever you want to put at the top of that pinnacle for that time frame during his Stunning Steve run and also the beginning of his Stone Cold run. I wouldn't necessarily put him at the tippy top, but he's right there under it. I'd give him a 4 for this. Now our next category, striking. Basically your punches, kicks, all that stuff of that nature. For The Rock, I'm giving The Rock a 3 again. And the main reason The Rock gets a 3 here is because of his horrible punches. Now, he gets away with it because he's The Rock, and The Rock can get away with pretty much anything in the ring, and fans would still cheer for him. But he had some of the worst punches I've ever seen in wrestling. Because of that, I gotta knock him down. But otherwise, he's solid. His kicks, his clotheslines, stuff of that nature are all good. Just those punches are pretty bad. On the opposite end, Stone Cold Steve Austin, I'm giving Steve a 5. Now, where I've knocked off The Rock for his punches, Steve was an adept puncher. He was one of the best brawling wrestlers there is. Once he had to adapt his style after the neck injury and became more of a brawler, he fit it like a glove. I could have knocked him down a bit here because there were times where he did the stomp the mud hole in the corner where it was pretty bad, but I want to say those are few and far between. They're not as prevalent as The Rock's bad punches. For that, I'm going to give Steve the benefit of the doubt. I mean, he did have off nights, every wrestler does. Even Buddy Rogers and Nature Boy Ric Flair did, so Steve gets a 5. Next up, how they perform as a heel. The Rock is getting a 5. The Rock is one of the best heels of his time frame. Even now when he comes back and does the final boss character, he's still a very effective heel. He's a guy that everybody loves, but you will buy him and you will boo him as a heel. I think he's one of the best that ever did it. That's why he gets a 5. For Austin, I'm also giving Austin a 5 here. And this isn't necessarily for his heel run as Stone Cold, although I did think that was, while a bad decision, I don't think it was right for business. I didn't think he personally did bad in that role, and I think some of his more hilarious, more iconic moments came from that time. The mimicking Vince when Vince would talk, his thing with Kurt Angle, both vying for Vince's affection, that was kind of cool. His singing parts, all very cool. The reason why he gets a 5 here is his Hollywood Blondes and Stunning Steve stuff. You could argue that Stunning Steve and the Hollywood Blondes even are a bit of a Ric Flair ripoff, but you could say that about a lot of wrestlers that came out in the late 80s, early 90s, whether it be him, Shane Douglas to an extent, Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels will openly admit he took a lot from Ric Flair, and there's with good reason. The same reason that people take stuff from Austin took a bit from Flair because Flair was the most successful wrestler of his time frame. I thought he was absolutely awesome as a heel. I think WCW severely missed a boat on putting the Stone Cold, or or even the Stunning Steve character at the top of their card, because I think he absolutely could have carried it, as seen by the fact that when he goes to WWE, becomes one of the biggest stars in all the history of wrestling. That's why I'm giving him a 5 here. Next up, how they perform as a face. The Rock's getting a 5. He's charismatic. The crowd sings along with him. They know every word he's going to say. They say it with him. All he needs to do is raise an eyebrow, call somebody a jabroni, sing a little silly song, and the crowd goes wild. For Stone Cold, he's getting a 5 as well. Arguably the greatest babyface of all time, especially in the Austin vs. McMahon feud, which you gotta give some credit to Vince McMahon, as much as we hate to do nowadays. He was a perfect foil for Stone Cold. Stone Cold was your everyman, beer-drinking, blue-collared worker who got a chance to become the world champ. Next category, promos. I mean, do I even have to explain this one? They're both getting a 5 here. You got two of the best talkers in the history of wrestling. What can I say about The Rock and his talking capabilities that hasn't been said? So many of his phrases became just commonplace and part of the wrestling lexicon, whether it be calling people jabronis, which I know he wasn't the first, or SmackDown Hotel, or laying the SmackDown, or do you smell what The Rock is cooking? Everything he said became catchphrase. Steve Austin, very much the same, whether it be Austin 316, that's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so. Even What, which to this day, you hear the What chant on almost every wrestling show you'll see. And yes, it is annoying at points, but you gotta think back to when he did it and how over he got it. I mean, these guys are two of the best promos, not only of their time, but of all time. Next up, presentation. Again, they're both going to get a 5 here. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Stone Cold was exactly what he was supposed to be, whether it be during the Stunning Steve era, where he had a more flamboyant look, or the bionic redneck jean shorts with the knee supports and the black vest. It was simple. It made sense. It's who he was. The Rock the same way with the $500 t-shirts and the Brahma Bull pants. I mean, yeah, I could maybe knock off a bit for The Rock for his Rocky Maivia run, but let's be honest, that really wasn't that long, and that's not indicative of the character itself. So they both get a 5 here. I mean, how can you argue with two guys that were presented to be top guys, and they looked the part, they acted the part, everybody believed them as the part. Next up, charisma. Again, I can't make an argument to give either one of these guys less than a 5. Easily two of the most charismatic wrestlers of all time. They just open their mouth and people automatically gravitate to everything they say. Whether you wanted to have a beer with Stone Cold or have a laugh with The Rock, both of these guys drew you into their character and made you think, this guy is my guy. And both in very different ways. They're ultra charismatic. There's a reason why there's 3 different WrestleManias they main evented against each other. There's a reason why people put them both on the Mount Rushmore of WWE, and that's a different argument for a different story. But they're two of the greatest, most charismatic wrestlers of all time. They both get a 5. Next up, big game performance. How they wrestle in their big moments, WrestleMania main events, pay-per-view main events, all that fun stuff. Again, I gotta say it again, another category where both men get a 5. How can you argue with it when you have some of the best WrestleMania matches, whether it be 17, 19, these guys against each other, it was just magic. I mean, anytime you had Stone Cold and The Rock, whether it be going all the way back to their Intercontinental run against each other, or the World Championship, or on the biggest stage, or either one of them against other wrestlers on the biggest stage, they always set the bar as high as it could possibly be set. They always gave us interesting matches. I think they were some of the best matches of their generation. That's why they get a 5. Now, totaling that up, The Rock gets 36 total points, and Stone Cold gets 39, just one short of being perfect. But we do have our bonus points. And how you get bonus points, if you're not aware, every Wednesday I put on my community page a poll basically asking you who was better, and whoever wins the poll gets a bonus 5 points. This one had a little bit extra time to stew because last week I was sick and didn't put out a video, so this one stayed up for 2 weeks. The winner of the bonus points, Stone Cold Steve Austin, giving Stone Cold a total of 44 points to The Rock's 36. Your winner, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And this one again was a lot of fun. Again, two guys that are exemplary of the generation they came up in. Two guys that You can't think of the Attitude Era without thinking of both of these guys. Probably on almost equal footing here. I mean, it was a very close fought battle. They're both really good. They're both top tier guys. Stone Cold just happens to be a bit better. With all that being said, pay attention to the community page on my YouTube. This Wednesday, we're going to put up our new poll for next week's video. That way you could vote on it. You could have your opinion heard. The 5 points could have swung this. If The Rock would have won, that would have gave him 41 to Stone Cold's 39 and made him the winner. So pay attention to that. Definitely check the like button, smash the like button, subscribe, all that fun stuff that every YouTuber tells you to do, because it definitely helps us out. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and you've been watching Who Was Better.